Shalom, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to another lecture about Israel. My name is Omer Eshel, and I'm with the Bible Comes to Life Travel and Education Center. This is a series of lectures about Israel, history, geography, innovation, and so on and so forth. This one is about innovation in Israel. We covered several archaeological and biblical aspects in our past lectures. This one will be more about the present and the future, not so much the past. So before we will dive in, let us all start with prayer. I'll do it in Hebrew then in English. אבינו שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו, תן לנו את הידע ותן לנו את היכולת לראות את מעשיך דרך האבנים ודרך הארץ שלנו. Our Father in heaven, give us the knowledge and wisdom to see your works through the stones and through the people of our country. And let us say amen. So we are going to dive in now today into a lecture which is very unique. It's about innovation and how Israel basically is shaping the world as we speak, especially, when we're talking now of what is going on in today's day and age, with the war with Iran. So let us start. We'll dive in, and then I'm sure this presentation will rock your world. It really do. So this is a picture of a skyline of Tel Aviv. It's actually a little bit outdated. I can tell you that there are two more towers that are not here. But just to understand, people think that Israel, we ride on camels. You can. We always joke by saying that in Israel, the camels are a miracle because it costs $5 to get on, 50 to get off. Maybe that's another part of this the startup innovation. But no, Israel is actually one of the most high-tech and most advanced countries in the world. And interestingly enough, David Ben-Gurion, who was our first prime minister and one of the founding fathers of our state, he said, in Israel, to be realistic, you must believe in miracles. And this is the words of our first prime minister back in the 40s. So let's dive in. First of all, we need to know the size of Israel. That tiny little speck that you see here, which is a lot smaller than the cursor of my computer, that is the land of Israel. Israel fits into Texas 50 times. Israel fits into Turkey 52 times. Israel fits into Egypt 42 times. Israel fits into Jordan 2.5 times. So it's actually one of the smallest countries in the world. It's so small that you don't even have enough space to write the name Israel. That's why in some maps larger than this, you're going to see IL, and that's it. So it's funny to think about it because it's one of the most known countries in the world. Every news outlet opens their broadcast about what's going on in Israel. And yet again, it's one of the smallest countries in the world. And the conflict that we have in Israel with our Arab neighbors is actually one of the smallest and most insignificant conflicts in the history of humanity. And just to prove my point, in terms of landmass, in the last 120 years since the beginning of Zionism, the loss and gain of land on both sides between Israel and the Arabs it's not even compared to D-Day. On D-Day, 1944, the Allies gained more land than the entire state of Israel. If you look in terms of casualties, if you take all of the casualties of Israel since the beginning of Zionism in 1882, we're talking a span of 150 years. All the wars, all the terror attacks within Israel, outside of Israel, everything to do with Israeli-Arab conflict, you're going to reach roughly around 50,000 people in 150 years. 50,000 people, that's almost the number of what the Iranian killed in 4 days, a month and a half ago. So what is going on? Why is Israel always on the news? Always. What's up? The reason is very simple. This is much more than land dispute or physical war. This is spiritual. And this presentation, what I'm about to show you, is to show you how God uses his land and his people to fight his battles. Because again, this is all spiritual. If you look at the statistics, Israel has a little bit less than 10 million people. Extremely small country with no natural resources. I mean, think about it. The main deposits of oil in the world is around us, a apart from Israel. We don't even have one oil well, not even one. We have a little bit of natural gas, yes, but that's basically it. No diamonds, no water, no timber, no coal, nothing. Really nothing. Sand and rocks, and that's basically it. And even the forest that we do have, we didn't inherit it. We actually planted them. However, it is one of the most highly educated nations in the world. And this has a lot to do with the Jewish mentality. There is a joke in the Jewish world that two Jewish women meet each other in the synagogue, and the first one asks the other one, "I heard you have two kids," and she said, "Yes, one is a doctor and one is a lawyer." And she said, "Oh, that's very, very nice. And when did they finish university?" So the first woman said, "Well, the doctor is 4 years old and the lawyer is 2 years old." This is something to do with the culture of Israel. This is part of who we are. And this has a lot to do with the fact that Jews were persecuted for the past ever, since the time of Pharaoh. So we're talking 3,000 years. There's one thing that our history teaches us is not how much money you have or how much land you have, is how much brain capacity you have. And that actually shaped the Jewish culture and the Jewish world. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you guys know this, the most educated people in Israel in terms of a society, it's actually not the Jews. It's the Christian Arabs, the Christian Arabs. Why? They're a very small minority and they learn from the Jews. They said, because we are a small minority, because we were persecuted by the Muslims for so many years, we need to adopt the way of thinking of the Jews. So it's interesting to see how the Jewish mentality affected Arab Christians. Of course, this is one of the highest concentration of startup per capita because of that, because of this mentality. When you look at Israel itself, Shimon Peres, you can read, he says the real natural resource of Israel is the human mind. Human mind, and I would even add to this the human spirit. We have over 7,000 startups in a nation that is about the size of New Jersey. Some of the major R&D, research and development centers in the world are based in Israel. When you buy a new iPhone and the new chips that they have, that they're so proud of it, it actually is manufactured in Israel. Intel, one of the biggest processors in the world, is manufactured in Israel. Microsoft, one of their main R&D, is located in Herzliya next to Tel Aviv. And it's not because of taxation. This is not like the model in Ireland back in the 90s. Common, we're going to give you tax break. Of course, they make tax break as well, but it's not it. We need to stop and think, how come this world of innovation is so unique to such a small country? How can that be? And this has a lot to do with the geopolitical climate and the actual physical climate around us. We're going to dive into this in a few seconds. When we look at the problems that we have now in Israel, and I think that the quote from Psalms is exactly what fits here. We have a culture of problem solving, and I explain to you from a personal point of view. When I was in the military, and my commander used to tell me, "I want you to bring this item, that item, and this item, and you have 2 minutes to do it." I remember that the question, or sometimes I used to tell my commander, "But I don't know how to do it." His answer was, "Find the problem." That's it. It's not I don't know or they don't have it. They don't have it, find a solution. And this is something which is embedded into the Jewish culture in general, but also in the Israeli culture even more. This picture here is a picture of combat soldiers with full military gear, and you can see that they're flying drones. Actually, one of the interesting things that was done to us, that we have done in the past conflict with Gaza, I'll give you an example that many people spoke about it, that instead of sending troops into the tunnels of Hamas to try and map those tunnels, because it can be booby-trapped, at the beginning, Israel used dogs to go in. But then again, dogs will get injured by the bombs of Hamas, and we don't want that. God created dogs as well. So we started with robots. But robots, when they touch booby traps, they also blow up. So that's not a good idea. So we use drones. But then if you inside a tunnel and you way down inside the ground, you're not going to have reception. So what you're seeing here is actually few drones flying right behind the other one. The first one broadcasts to the one behind, the other one broadcasts to the one behind, and so on and so forth. It's kind of like a water link, that you bring water, like back in the old days before fire departments. And that basically the first drone broadcast, and every other drone behind it is kind of like a transmission system. And that goes back to the chain of command, which you see right here, and they give orders to their friends of what is in front of them. This is just one example. Another example, when we used to go down, I have many friends used to go down to the tunnels in Gaza. The problem is that once you clear a tunnel, you are wide open because you don't know who's coming behind you. They had special nets, which are made out of, well, I cannot say out of what, but you open it, and that basically seals the tunnel completely, and you can see through it. The other side cannot shoot at you, cannot come to you, cannot throw anything at you, but you see the other side. It's amazing. I mean, the fields of innovation, especially military innovation, is out of this world. And when you look at it, it's not surprising. Because we don't have those resources, because we don't have a lot of land mass. So if, let's say, a land mass will be conquered by our enemies, we know what's going to happen to the people over there. This is not like what we've seen in other wars. When you look at gain of territory back in, let's say, Second World War, if the Nazis conquered a village which belongs to France, they wouldn't be nice to the people over there, but it wouldn't kill all the village. Sometimes they did, but most of the times they didn't, unless you're a Jew. If you're a Jew, you'll be executed. And I think this is something that it resonates into the mind of every Jew in the world. I have to find a clever way out of this because my life depends on it, and that's literally speaking. So the amount of innovation that we see in the military service is out of this world. Out of this world. How you take one object, you add another one, and boom, you have a complete new innovation. This brought to life to some of the most amazing inventions in world history, which we're going to talk about this in a second. One thing which is very interesting. Once you finish your military service, imagine these boys here that flying drones in tunnels in Gaza. Tomorrow, they can use those drones for civilian usage. They can use them for maps. They can use them for geological surveys. They can use them for police. They can use them for basically anything. So the knowledge that you accumulate in the army, it's not just shooting a gun. That's actually a very small and insignificant trade that you have. The gun is the small part. This, how you can use military innovation for civilian usage, that's what makes all the difference. And this is what makes Israel so unique. Because once you finish your army, everybody serves in the army. Once you finish your military service, you use those skills that you learn in a very young age in universities and later on in civilian life. And that's how we see so many innovation companies. One of the most amazing and famous invention in Israel is the Iron Dome. I got to tell you the story about the Iron Dome. Back in the Second Lebanese War in 2006, Hezbollah fired thousands of missiles against basically defenseless civilian population, mostly in Haifa. And the fear was that they will not kill the people because we have bomb shelters, but the damage will be so severe that it's going to cost generations of R&D to basically rebuild it. There was a Minister of Defense by the name Amir Peretz. Amir Peretz was not a military person. He was actually head of the unions. He was a socialist guy, belongs to the Labor Party. He was actually a sergeant when you look at of his military service. But he came up with the idea of doing an Iron Dome. When we have that quote, steel sharpens steel, or iron sharpens iron. Well, in this case, iron blows iron. And I think that this picture that you see right here of launching from Gaza into Tel Aviv shows the difference. Look at this. On this side, we have Gaza. They are firing missiles to kill as many people as possible, as many children as possible. The more damage, the more death, the better for them. Each missile like this costs a few $100s. On the other hand, you have the Iron Dome being launched at them, and look at this. The Iron Dome intercept those missiles, and each Iron Dome costs about 10 times the cost of the missile. And I think this is the biggest difference between us and our enemies. For our enemies, they look at destruction as their goal and death as their way of victory. For us, we don't care about possession. We really don't. A house can be rebuilt, a car can be repurchased. You cannot bring back to life a human being, unless you're Jesus and that's Lazarus. But you cannot bring life back. You cannot grow another arm. Yet, we're working on this. But you cannot grow another arm at this point. So it is much more important to us in our mentality, in our way of belief, in our way of scriptures, that life matters above all. And that explains a lot the Iron Dome. I can tell you that in this conflict right now between Israel, the United States, and Iran, you know that Iran attacked more than 13 nations. 13 nations in 12 days. The number one country that was hit is not Israel, it's United Arab Emirates. And the reason why they're doing this is because Iran wants to basically take over the oil in the world, okay, that by destroying the UAE oil refineries. The UAE don't have bomb shelters, and the damage is not that big. How can that be? Because of this. UAE uses today Israeli Iron Dome. It's amazing to think about it. United Arab Emirates is using Israeli Iron Dome to shut down Iranian Shiite missiles. It sounds like a joke, but that's what it really is. In addition to this, we have the drone technology, which I spoke about in a second. Cyber technology, unbelievable. We all remember the pager, what we did to Hezbollah. We all remember how that ends. You know, how Israel can break into cell phones, can listen and to tap to basically anything. It is way beyond our wildest dreams. Wildest dreams. I can tell you on a personal note, there's an Israeli company that when President Trump, there was an attempt to assassinate him, there was a problem for the FBI to go into the killer's or the assassin's cell phone because of very high-end technology of Apple. They brought it to an Israeli company, which nobody knows the name of it, and they broke the code in 35 seconds. Of course, this is today, it's not in the market. If it would, I would have bought the stock of that company, but that's what happened. So it is incredible to see the usage of this cyber technology and what good it can do to humankind. When you look at cyber, the number one hub of cyber technology in Israel is actually Beersheba. We know Beersheba from the Bible. This is the place of the wells of Abraham. And is one of the biggest hubs of cybersecurity actually in the world. Beersheba is a city that you don't hear much about it. It's not like Haifa or Tel Aviv or Jerusalem. It's a city, it's the fourth largest city in Israel, but it's in the south. It's in the Negev desert. And David Ben Gurion once said that in the Negev, the people of Israel will be tested. There's more to it than what he actually meant. He spoke about using the desert and make it bloom, which we're going to talk about this in a second. But I think today, because of innovation and because of way of thinking, the desert in Israel is one of the biggest hubs of human ingenuity actually in the world. So most of the cyber security or cyber innovation that you hear about are originated from the deep south desert in Israel. Let's look at another field of innovation, and this is the desalination factory. In Isaiah, and it says, I will make rivers flow on barren heights. Israel is a desert. 60% of Israel is desert. The other 40% is semi-desert. We have one lake, that's the Sea of Galilee, and we have one river, which is the Jordan, which in some places looks like a ditch in one of the creeks in Illinois. It's a very small river. It's not the Volga. It's definitely not the Mississippi. It's a small creek. So what's going on? Israel invented desalination factories, meaning you take seawater, you break the molecules of the salt from the seawater, and you make it drinkable water. How amazing that is. Actually, when I was a kid, I remember that we used to say, save on water. You'll see when Israelis wash their dishes, they're going to close the tap of the water. Why? Because you want to preserve water. That's the entire notion of the drip irrigation. You want to save as much water as possible because water is very scarce, especially when our neighbors, the Palestinians, are drawing from the aquifer left, right, and center. And what happens is if you do too much you extract too much water from the aquifer, the salt water will go up, or the percentage of the soil, the percentage of salt in the soil will go higher. And what's going to happen? You're going to contaminate the water table, which what happened in the West Bank and in Syria and in Iran. Iran today is parched. They have no water at all, nothing. Jordan has no water. Syria, no water. Where the water of Jordan come from? They come from Israel. Israel's main water supply is not the Sea of Galilee and it's not aquifer. It's actually desalination factories. We have several. I don't know, and I cannot tell the actual number, but we have several. And those are giving us enough water to sustain 1.5 times of our population. So what happens is you have excess of water. You have a lot of water, good drinking water that you don't have anything to do with them. So we give them away to the nation of Jordan. In the peace treaty back in 1994, Israel signed to give 50 million cubic meters every year of fresh water from the Sea of Galilee to the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. Today, because of desalination factories, we actually giving them 100 million cubic meters of water. The reason why Israel is alive, why Jordan is alive, is because of Israel. Same thing goes to United Arab Emirates. Their drinking water is coming from Israel innovation. Same thing goes to Saudi, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and some other nations that we don't really have any agreements with them or diplomatic relations, but let's say they are alive because of us. Another interesting thing is that 90% of sewage water in Israel is treated. What does that mean? When you flush your toilet, when you take a shower, when you wash your hands, when you brush your teeth, the water goes into huge reservoirs in several areas in Israel. They are chemically being, biologically, the waste is being diffused and separate, and then you have clean water running through the pipes to do agricultural irrigation. So the water that we use in Israel for irrigation is actually recycled water. 90% of our water is being recycled. In my home, my personal home, everything to do with showers and sinks, nothing with solid waste. I don't have that good of a technology here in my home. This is much more down-to-earth technology. But showers and sinks, they go through a special system that is called gray water in my home, and it's being distributed in drip irrigation to all the trees in my backyard. So my water bill is almost nothing. And that's again to see how you can use lemon and turn it into a lemonade. Today, when you travel in Israel and you see pipes in fields, you're going to see different colors. Some of those pipes will be purple. Purple mean treated water. Why? They use different code of colors because if you are a hiker and you walk around and you see a faucet, you need to know if you can drink from that water or you cannot. Technically, I got to tell you, you can. Even if it's treatable water, it is treatable to a point that it's actually drinking water. Why we don't do that? Psychological effect. It's hard for us to drink sewage water. It's easier to drink seawater, which are not much cleaner, but it's just psychological effect. Interestingly enough, another innovation that started this year. We had major droughts in the Middle East in the past, I would say almost 10 years. And the water table is receding lower and lower and lower. And the Sea of Galilee, it's one of its lowest heights in history. Back in 1964, we had a prime minister by the name of Levi Eshkol. And Levi Eshkol built a national water carrier that goes from Tiberias, right here for the Sea of Galilee, down through major, huge pipes to the center, to the south, and then down to the Negev Desert. That, when I was a kid, the main drinking source of Israel was the Sea of Galilee. But today, because of desalinization factories, we don't need to use the Sea of Galilee. We don't need to pump from the Sea of Galilee. So what are we doing with the excess water? Because the lake itself is getting dried out because of damming of rivers, climate change, and so on and so forth. Israel takes the desalinization factories, which is here, all these desalinization factories, the access of the treated water, instead of dumping them back to the sea, we are actually flowing the water back into the Sea of Galilee here through a natural creek called Salmon Creek, right over here. This is the exit part of the water that they come from the Mediterranean, and it's flowing from the Mediterranean to the Sea of Galilee. How can that be? The Mediterranean is zero, the elevation of it is zero. Sea of Galilee is minus 217. So we use the height difference to basically fill up the Sea of Galilee. It's incredible. This is a man-made drinkable water river that Israel built actually a year ago. One of the most interesting and most known invention in Israel, of course, is the irrigation, but it's way more than irrigation itself. This is actually one of the oldest inventions of agriculture in Israel. The drip irrigation, of course, comes from the problem that we don't have enough water. We went way beyond the drips. If you look at this, these are sorry, these are drips pipes that basically give water to the plants around it. The main idea is instead of spraying the water and then you have a mist and that mist is evaporating, so 80% of the water are being evaporated, and even more than that, once they're being evaporated, the salt of the water sinks down and basically poisons the ground. So to do irrigation on high noon, that's not a good idea. So drip irrigation is you actually have little drips, little holes that you can time how much water you want through that little hole. For example, a gallon an hour, and that's it. Now, if you calculate, let's say this has 100 holes, this pipe here, that's 100 gallons per hour because it's spread throughout the entire field. But 90% of that gallon is actually being absorbed to the ground and not being evaporated. That's the big trick. That's the big miracle. The miracle is not to allow it to be evaporated. It went even further than that. You remember I told you about how military affects the way of thinking? In the army, when a soldier get hit, the first thing that people do, the medical team is doing, is putting an IV. First thing. So to keep him hydrated. Back in the 90s, there was a combat soldier, a medic, that said, if I can put an IV into a human being, why I cannot put an IV into a plant? So they took the drip irrigation even further up. In very dry areas, they have this little IV here that the water don't go to the ground. The drip goes to the roots. So there's actually zero evaporation. You literally put an IV into the roots of the plant. Most of the south of Israel is like this. It is unbelievable. 100% of the water, or 99.9% of the water, is in the ground and not being evaporated. Another innovation that you can see are these greenhouses. Now, this is funny because in cold countries, greenhouses are to produce heat to keep the plants. In Israel, you don't need to produce heat. It's hot enough. So why are there greenhouses? This is actually because of UV light. These greenhouses use special fabric or special material to transform the radiation from the sun to make it an accelerator to help the plants. That's why you see those greenhouses. And of course, it helps against evaporation and creates a basically tropic climate. Think about it. You have very hot sun in very humid area. That's like a tropic rainforest. It's exactly the same idea. Desert will be hot and dry, but if you have closed ecosystem like this one, then it's basically the same as a jungle. So that's the greenhouse that you see all over the place. Some of the medical innovation that I want to share with you. For example, PillCam, this one right here. This again comes from the military. This is a pill that you swallow and has a camera in it, and that basically give the doctor a full view of how the internal of your body looks like. So if there is a clog, if there is a cancer or anything like that, you can literally see that instead of doing an operation. This is a new innovation. This is a home ultrasound. Instead of going to hospital and schlep to the hospital, and then you need to make an appointment, and then by the time you sit there, and it's not that simple. Today, women in Israel can take this device and scan the baby, and that monitor is connected to the clinic where the doctor can look at the ultrasound in the comfort of the woman's house. She doesn't need to leave the house. This picture is actually one of the most amazing breakthrough, I think, ever. This is a operation that was done 4 years ago during COVID. During COVID, one of the biggest problems was for surgeons to conduct any kind of surgery because of COVID. So an Israeli company invented a surgical robot that is connected to a remote area, which was about 15 miles away, and the surgeon is able to produce the surgery. This is a heart bypass surgery by using the handles, and the robot is doing the work. So this is the first remote operation in history, and you'll be happy to hear that it's been used quite a lot now. And the guy that had the operation is alive and well. So this is the first ever remote control operation. Again, think of that in military usage. You can start to see the connection. This is just a list of major innovation in Israel. And I gotta share this with you because I think this is funny. When we had the war with Gaza, nations like Spain, for example, came and say, we are going to boycott Israel. BDS, boycott, invest, something like that. I don't remember the full three, and sanctions. Give sanctions over Israel. Here's the problem. Those nations in Europe still think that Israel produces oranges. We used to. Back in the early days of Zionism, we used to produce oranges, Jaffa oranges. We are no longer producing oranges. We do, but not that much. And our main source of income is not agriculture. It's also not tourism. It's high tech. So if you decide to boycott Israel, then you say goodbye to Waze, Google Maps, PillCam, Iron Dome missiles, USB on any kind of usage of USB, any kind of image and scanning technology, laser beam, any drip irrigation, any UAV technology, any safety system on any car in the world, like Mobileye. So basically, if you boycott Israel, you cannot even use a cell phone. That's what it means. So, and it's funny, I got to share this with you because today the same nations that boycott Israel 3 years ago, 2 years ago, are begging us today to give them technology because Russia is at the door. And all of a sudden, there's like, oh, you know what? Maybe we do need those Iron Domes. Maybe we do need those Mobileye driver assistants. Way beyond oranges. And this one I want to share with this one. See this firewall technology? Firewall technology was invented in Israel by a company by the name Checkpoint. Imagine if Europe did not have firewall. How many cyber attacks would they have on a daily basis from Russia and from Iran and from China? This is one of the main reasons why the banking system in Europe is still alive, because of number 9, firewall technology. So it's funny to see those useful idiots chanting from the river to the sea, and what did Israel do to us, and blah, 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 blah. Seriously? Really? The fact that you can even say that on social media is because of a chip that was made in Israel in Beersheba. When we look at what Israel is doing to the world, and I used this watermelon, by the way, pun intended, because today the watermelon is associated with the Palestinians because of the colors of the flag. Okay, so let's see things, well, we just read it, but things that Israel has been doing to the world today, and how would the world look like without Israel? And I can tell you, all of those who chanted for the river to the sea, all of those who wear this watermelon, if it wasn't for Israel and the water solution, there would be no people living in the Middle East. And I got to share this with you. If the kingdom of Jordan or Syria or any other of those nations would not have used Israeli technology for water desalination, once people don't have water to drink, they are desperate. And once they are desperate, they are going to go to places that do have water. And those places are the West, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, of course, Europe. So in a way, you can say that because of Israel's innovation, especially when it comes to water, the Middle East, you don't see a full movement of nations like we've seen back in the time of Attila the Hun. You don't see a full invasion and a violent invasion into the West, and that's because of Israel. What is the reason? What is the reason that we have this? How come Israel is like this? What's so unique about it? We spoke about the military aspect. We spoke about the idea of knowledge and that a person is what he has between his ears, right here, what you have in your brains. We need to remember another thing. Jews came from all over the world. My family came from Europe. My wife's family came from Iraq and from Israel. They were here since ever. She actually did a DNA test, which again was invented by Israel. Ancestry.com and 24, I don't remember the name of those companies. They are all Israeli technologies. And you can trace back your roots. And my wife's roots are from here. Her family is descendant of the exiles of Babylon. We can see that. And what's unique is that people who came from other places in the world brought with them tradition and way of thinking that are very different than other parts of the world. My family is Ashkenazi, and we think very Western, very Western. My wife's family is Mizrahi. They come from the Arab countries. They think very differently, very differently. And in Israel, because we are all Jews and we are all being persecuted throughout history, we all have a common faith and a common faith as well. So the ground is very open to listen to each other's ideas. This also comes from the very, very foundation of Judaism, which is about to debate. You always need to debate. Never take anything for granted. Never. Why this is good? As the Bible says, iron sharpens iron, or steel sharpens steel. When you come with an idea and someone is saying, I disagree with you, you need to defend your idea. Sometimes you cannot defend that idea. Then you say, you know what? That's a bad idea. Happened to me many, many times. But if you are able to convince that you are right, you also find the flaws in your own plan. That is the whole notion of debate. By the way, one of the most famous Jews in history that used that as a way of life is Jesus of Nazareth. When he used to sit down and teach his disciples, it was not by doctrinating on them. He was using parables for people to debate. And until today, we are debating those parables. What did he mean? So this is very Jewish way of understanding of learning, and that's to debate against each other. And I can tell you, and by the way, you can debate and have lunch together and everybody's still friends. This is a very big difference between the Jewish way of understanding of debate and Western way of understanding debate. Because in the West, if you debate, that means it will always lead to disagreement and you're being disrespectful to others' opinion. Here is exactly the opposite. You should debate. And it comes from a point of respect. You don't debate because you think the other side doesn't know what they're talking about. You debate because you want to prove your point and you know that you might be wrong. And that's perfectly fine. We can debate and then have lunch together. And I think this is one of the main keys why Israel is a startup nation. Universities. In Israel, university and higher education is actually very, very cheap. When you go to Hebrew University, which is ranked on top of the 100 universities in the world, Weizmann Institute, one of the best institutes in the world, Technion, it's our version of MIT. I forgot to add Beersheba University, the main hub of cybersecurity in the world. A cost of studies in Israel per year is 4,000 US. That's it. That's without room and board, but the tuition is 4,000 US dollars. That's the cost of tuition. So a full degree will be $12,000 for 3 years. That's it. So almost anyone can go and study. That's before any scholarship. So it's one of the cheapest places in the world to study. And again, that comes from the Jewish mentality of seeking wisdom. When we look at the future, what would the future even hold? Israel today is an empire of technology, robotics, AI, quantum usage, virtual realities, usage of drones and missiles and Iron Dome and laser beam. Think about it. If I were to tell you 5 years ago that we are going to use lasers to intercept missiles, you're going to tell me you watch way too much Star Trek. But that's a fact today. Today, Israel is using laser beam to take down drones and missiles as we speak. If I were to tell you 15 years ago that Israel is going to invent a missile that will hunt down another missile, and if that missile was going to hit an open ground, my system will not going to use ammunition, you're going to tell me you're out of your mind. How can you do it? That's the Iron Dome. We have it. If I were to tell you that in 2021, we are going to operate a person using robots and do a bypass surgery where the doctor is 15 miles away, you're going to tell me you watch way too many movies. But folks, this is it. It's not the future, it's the present. We actually see that. And that's what makes it so amazing. You know, when you are in Israel, you are amazed by how high-tech this nation really is. When we look at the conclusion, you know, in book of Isaiah, one of my favorite quotes in the Bible, Isaiah said, "For out of Zion shall go for the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem." That's in Isaiah 2:3. I would say that after what have happened throughout these years and through the challenges that we had, the Jewish nation in general, but the Israelis in more particular, we can say, out of Zion, not just go for the law. Out of Zion also go inventions and ideas. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, please send them to us and we're going to review them on our live presentation this Saturday at 10 a.m. Until then, thank you so much. God bless. And remember, as I always say, we serve an awesome God. Shalom, shalom.